Hey, this is Matt Wimmer from Brody Precision. In this video, we are going to be continuing our cybersecurity and BMS series, and we're going to get hands-on in Niagara and hardening our Niagara installations so that we have the most secure stations and platforms that we can possibly have. Tridium has put out a really nice document called their Niagara 4 Hardening Guide that lays out in detail every possible thing really that you can do in your station and all of their recommendations for it in making sure that your station is as secure as possible. We're going to hit on some of the bullet points in this video, and then we'll also mention some other videos that you can check out that we've done in the past that go into a little bit more detail about specific features that you might want to implement. So let's jump into Niagara now and get started. All right, so I am logged into the demo station that we always look at here that's running in the cloud. And one of the first things that you're always going to want to consider is make sure that you're using a secure connection for your Fox, for your web service, and for your platform. And where we make those changes depends on the specific service that we're talking about. But we'll start with the Fox service because it's the first one that shows up on our services list that has this as a possibility. And we're going to see in that Fox service, we have our Fox. That's our normal 1911 port that you're used to if you've been using Niagara for a really long time. And then we also have our Fox S. That's our Fox over Secure, so TLS. That is beneath that regular Fox. And we have enabled options for both of them. You want to have this as Fox S only. You don't want to be using Fox. It is unencrypted, which means when you go to log in, if there's secure data that's being sent back and forth between your station and your clients, that data is going to come across in a unencrypted manner. It's going to come across in clear text, which means if someone really wanted to, they very likely could jump in the middle there and see exactly what you are saying and doing and potentially get your password. So always want to have your Fox S enabled and your Fox S only enabled to ensure that you're only using the secure connections and you're not using unsecure connections for that. Also worth noting, the Fox S minimum protocol. Best case scenario, you're using TLS 1.3 as your minimum protocol for TLS. Obviously, known vulnerabilities in older versions. 1.3 is the latest and greatest, and known to be good. Same goes for the Cypher suite group. You want to be using recommended here whenever possible. Only switch to supported if you're having issues. And then underneath that, we'll go into a little bit more detail on the certificate stuff in a little bit. We also have a full series of videos on using certificates in Niagara that you can delve into that in more detail. The next piece to look at is the web service. This is one that probably everyone is aware of. This is where you're going to set the HTTP and HTTPS ports to access your stations. You, again, want to be using HTTPS here. That is the secure version, so port 443 by default. You want to be using that wherever possible, and you also want to have that HTTPS enabled as well. Same thing goes for the minimum protocol. Ideally, you want to set that for 1.3. There are cases where maybe you need to fall back to a little bit older versions as your minimum supported protocols. And then last but not least, we are going to want to look at our platform setup here and log into the platform in order to do that underneath our platform administration and then our change TLS settings. We want this to be TLS only. We can set our certificate in here, and we can also do the protocol pieces that we've done in the past for the other services. And our TLS Cypher suite group, same thing as the other servers. The next bit to talk about here with our TLS and our secure connections for all of the services, web service, Fox service, and the platform, is the certificate that we are using. For the web service, that's going to be underneath your web service, and then the main HTTPS certificate. Again, we've done a whole video series on how to set these certificates up and use them. Ideally, you want to have a fully signed certificate that you're using in your station. What that signed certificate does is prove that the holder of that certificate is who they say they are. But from an encryption and actual usage standpoint, we're still getting the benefits of HTTPS, even if we're using a self-signed certificate on that encryption front. So at the very, very least, using that self-signed certificate is going to get you that encryption. Best practice would be to get that signed then to prove that, this server is who it says it is, and the browser then can trust, okay, I know exactly who I'm talking to. But again, we have a full series of videos on that you can dive into and take a closer look at. We'll have them linked down in the comments and then up here in the top as well. And the next thing that we'll talk about is the password requirement and controls that we have available to us within Niagara. All of those are set up underneath our authentication service. You might expect them to be underneath the user service, but they're actually under the authentication service. And then the authentication scheme. The authentication scheme that we typically use for regular users in Niagara is the digest scheme. So if we double click on the digest scheme here, you'll see that you have this global password configuration. You open it up, and then we have password strength options underneath it. We can set our minimum length, maximum length, minimum lower, minimum upper, minimum digits, and minimum special options. The recommendation is don't make these lower than they come out of the box. If anything, if you're going to come in here and make changes to your password strength requirements, you should be bumping the requirements, not lowering them. By default, I think you're going to see something along these lines. Minimum length of 10, maximum length of 64, and then an upper, a lower, and a digit as required. At the very least, you should have this. As we talked about in the first video in this series, security is all about making compromises, even if they inconvenience you a little bit. It's worth having those additional requirements in there in order to make your stations more and more secure. Another piece that's worth checking out and noting is that we also have the ability to use additional requirements on our logins, such as GAuth, which is the Google Authenticator, two-factor authentication. That's what this Google authentication scheme is. We did a full video on exactly how to set that up and use it that you can check out again up top here and down in the description down below. So that does it on the password side of things. Next part that we want to consider and just make note of is underneath our platform administration, we have our system passphrase. System passphrase should be treated as a password. It's how the files and the passwords that we're storing within our station and things are being encrypted. This is sort of the encryption key that makes all of that work. You want to treat it as what it is, which is a password, and you want to make sure that you are handing this information off to owners of sites and that kind of thing as well when you give them their login credentials for the sites that are theirs. So if you ever need to make changes to that, that's here. You're required to, out of the box, when you go to set up a new install of Niagara or you set up a new Jace, you're required to change this passphrase from the default or set one if there isn't a default at all. So just another thing to keep in mind. And then the other thing that you really want to do, and this is a little bit more difficult because it's something that you just need to get used to doing, which is maintaining good account hygiene, making sure that your users have an individual account per user. You're not sharing accounts amongst people, and we'll get to why that's important here in a little bit. But every user should have his own account, should have his own password. Ideally, you don't even know what that password is for the user. You can do things like when you go and create your user, you can go in here and have it force a reset when they log in for the first time. So you give them like a dummy password that they would use to log in first, and then it would prompt them to put in a new password so that everything is secure and only that user knows their password to their account. Other thing worth noting here is we have the ability to make some changes for allowing concurrent connections. If you have someone like an admin user or a super user that has a whole bunch of different roles and access rights, ideally, you wouldn't allow them to be logged in from multiple places at the same time. So you would turn off this concurrent sessions piece, and then you would leave the auto log off enabled so that after a period of time, that account is automatically logged off the system if they aren't actually using it. So someone can't come in behind and stay logged in and use it, and it might not be actually that user that's logged into the computer. This kind of thing happens all the time, and again, it's a little bit of inconvenience, but very well worth it, as we'll show here in a moment. Another thing you'll want to do is, ideally, you won't use users like this M2M. When you have a service account that is used to connect to, say, a database or to connect from your supervisor down to your JACEs at different sites, you don't want to use the same name for that service account as you use across all of your jobs. Worst case scenario, that password gets leaked or someone leaves your company and they take that password with them. Now they have unfettered rights potentially to all of your sites that use that M2M or server to JACE account that maybe you had set up. And then another critical portion of the user setup process is your roles and your category service. This is something that we'll go into in more depth here in the future because it's really critical for making sure that your sites are secure and users only have access to the information and controls that they specifically need. But the setup process is a little bit involved, as you would expect. So we'll have a future video delving in specifically on how to use the role service and how to use the category service to divvy up those permissions so that they are set correctly. And then another point that's worth mentioning is you want to make sure that you're staying up to date on your software. This means, you're getting the latest bug fixes, you're getting the latest vulnerability patches, and the best and easiest way to do that, as we've mentioned in previous videos, is to make sure that you're using the LTS versions if you don't think you're going to stay on top of a site. LTS means that you'll have a significantly longer support life on that version, which means you'll get more and more bug fixes and patches that don't necessarily require you to install a completely new version of Niagara on your supervisor, on your JACEs. It makes the process a little bit cleaner and simpler to set up and use. And then last but not least, you want to be using a VPN of some kind to get into your sites. You don't want to be doing port forwarding, as we discussed in the last video as our example. Port forwarding opens you up to a host of potential problems and issues. So having something like a TazzyBox is always the recommendation, or a VPN of any kind, because you're going to be a lot more secure in going that route. All right, so that is the main points on hardening your Niagara 4 stations and platforms. The full documentation from Tridium has significantly more depth in exactly the kinds of things that they recommend you do, and we'll have that linked down below, as I mentioned before. We will also have some future videos that delve into a little bit more depth in specific areas, like the security dashboard that's available to you in Niagara 4 that sort of brings bubbles up to the surface all of the potential issues that you have with your stations and your supervisors. So thanks for watching. As always, like and subscribe if you haven't already. If there's a specific topic, specific feature that you'd like to see explored in more depth than we have in this video, leave those down in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks.